Good morning, everybody. Yeah, thanks for coming. We've got record numbers again. We broke records last week and smashed it this week as well. So there's a lot of you in the audience. Okay, so face detection and recognition. Yes, we sort of officially launched it at the Melbourne Training Seminar in November, and a lot of the Australian New Zealanders have been using some or all of it since then. And then a few more people in the US and Canada after SPAC. But I want to start with not showing you what it does, but a little bit of a word of warning or whatnot. You may end up getting pushback from your schools and your customers about face recognition, usually. That's the term they'll use. There's some bad press about it. It's a bit of a controversial subject, this whole thing about biometrics and personal data of children and that sort of thing. And indeed, when people started using it down under, within a week, a school arced up to one of our customers in New Zealand, as it was, saying, oh, you can't do that. You can't have a child's biometric profile on the cloud and stuff like that. So I think we'll just spend the first few minutes talking about the security and privacy implications and how I'm going to placate you that there is nothing to worry about, and you can use that information if it comes up with your own customers. Yep, data privacy, all that sort of stuff. It's an issue. It will come up depending on your schools, your districts, your country. It will be more or less of an issue. Someone will say, oh, we're a bit concerned about you doing face detection on our children. And that's a legitimate concern, and the schools are doing their due diligence and just making sure everything's complying. And it is more of an issue in some places compared to others. In Europe, for example, we would not be able to do this. We would not be able to do face detection if we weren't doing it the way we were doing it because of their privacy laws. What do I mean by that? Compare how the way we do it compared to some other solutions out there. The main big difference, which will immediately placate concerns, is that everything about our system is in-house. You're doing it on your computer in the TimeStone software. The biometric profile, if we want to call it that, the face template, which is more strictly correct, that we make of somebody's face is stored in your MySQL database. There is no uploading of images involved. There is no using an external service in the cloud. There is no storing of it in the cloud. If you're an iOS customer, iOS doesn't know, doesn't care, doesn't need face detection. Nothing about it leaves your premises. It is all in-house. It is all on your computers. And even the traffic between your workstation and your server, for example, when you're doing face detection, that's even encrypted. But more about that in a second. So this is immediately a point of difference between our system and some of the alternatives out there. And I think you should use that if the question comes up with your schools and your parents or your children's parents. So expanding on that's fair enough. That's already a big step. But a parent or a school may legitimately ask, okay, but what happens if you're hacked? Okay, it's not in the cloud, accept that, but that doesn't mean, how secure is it on your systems, on your server? So basically what they're asking, there's a lot of ifs involved. So basically asking if someone breaks into your studio, either physically or virtually. So if they do that, and then if they manage to get into your server, so your server, surely you've got firewalls, you've got Windows passwords, you've got your own security to protect your own servers. So if they break in, and then if they manage to get onto your server, breaking through its security, then if they get into MySQL and break through its password, and as you know, you have to enter passwords to be able to connect to your database. So if they do all those three things, and then if they're cluey enough to know how to navigate our database and get to the relevant data section where the biometric profile is stored, it's the end of the road because it's actually encrypted. They won't be able to get any further. But let's say they are really, really, really good hackers and can get through that encryption, then what? Well, nothing. What are they going to do with that information? They can't recreate a face with it. They can't recreate a face with it. It's just numbers. It's of no use to them. In the same way that if someone got hold of my DNA profile, they're not going to be able to make another copy of me or know what I look like or stuff like that. So at the end of the road, because the data, relevant data is encrypted, and then when it's transferred from your server to your workstations, that traffic is also encrypted. But let's say they even get through that. I don't know how, but let's say they break through that encryption. It's only useful to them if they've got our software. If they've got our software and have the toolkit that we use for the face detection, okay, they'll be able to check whether that particular image is mismatched, for example, or has eyes closed, but they still won't be able to recreate the image. So keep that in mind. Keep all these ifs. Even if all these ifs come to fruition, it's fruitless for a hacker or for a thief. Keeping in mind again, to begin with, it's on your servers, it's not in the cloud. Okay, so I just want to start with that, just to put some people's minds at ease, because when they hear face recognition, alarm bells start going off. So let's put that aside and start talking about what to do. Okay, let's get started with a particular job. All right, take this one for example. Makes sense that you'd be doing this in images mode. The first step is you need to detect their faces after you've imported the images. Now, NeoPack, NeoComp, Pack Builder, Data Post, and all that, you import the images into them. We don't do the detection upon import. Not yet, we may down the line. Capture Post, on the other hand, will do the detection as you shoot. It'll be done for you, and when you bring that TNJ back and import it into your database, it will be done for you. This guy's been done. You can see he's got a blue rectangle around his face. That shows that we have detected his face and his biometric profile, his face template, has been saved in the database. The rest of the kids have not been done. So how did we get there? How did we do his face? All right. Before you do that, a couple of things you need to be aware of. Make sure your images are in the right orientation. They're all upright. No one's lying down. No one's in the wrong orientation. We do require the image to be in the right orientation. Again, down the road, we intend to use the face detect to orient the images for you. So you'll never have to worry about rotation again. It will detect the face, see that the eyes are vertically when they should be horizontally, of course, and rotate the image for you. But for now, you need to make sure the images are in the right orientation before you start. Then it's a matter of selecting the images. I've already done him. I'll just do Control All. And what do you do now? There's a keyboard shortcut which will detect the faces. That's Control F5. There's also a menu option, Images, Recognize Faces, Control F5. So either one, either use the menu or Control F5 will become your friend because you'll use it in our group as well. And this job has about 70 images, and I did want to do them all, so you get a feel for how long it takes. Okay. So you can see as it goes through those images, each face ends up with a blue rectangle. Some may end up with a red rectangle or red box, and I'll explain what that means in a second. But get a feel of how long these 69, 70 images will take. While that's happening, I will tell you that this works on the original images. So the resolution of these images doesn't really matter in terms of the resolution when you import it, because we go back and grab the original image and do the magic on that. Therefore, it is imperative, it stands to reason, that it must be able to find those images. If you're doing this step, if you do this step and nothing happens, it zooms through and they're all done within a second because they're not done and you don't see the blue box. It's because, most likely, it's because it couldn't find the images. Okay, that's caught a few people, including us, a couple of times. So there's an idea of how long it took to do 70 odd images. You could, and remember, it needs to be able to find the originals. So perhaps you may want to introduce into your workflow the images check. You may not even know this exists, but I use it quite often, images check. It goes through and checks all the images very quickly and will tell you if it can't find any. And it found them all, therefore it's done them all. Okay, so I just wanted to start with this job because it was little and easy and I knew all the images were there. It's not a very realistic one because the images are all perfect and it's not a real job. I'm going to flip now to a different job, which is a real job. It's got 2,000 images. I've already detected them, so we don't need to sit there and watch it. So let me close that one and open this one. A real job, like I said, close to 2,000 images. The detection has already been done. Okay. A few things. Straight away, you see the second image has got a red box. That will mean our eyes are closed. And this is one of the things that the face detection can do for you. It can detect closed eyes. In fact, we have a filter which says eyes closed. And doing that will show you all the ones with the eyes closed. Now there is, I hesitate to call it a bug, but you'll see some images such as this one, for example. There are false positives and we're aware of it and we're in a consultation with the toolkit developers about it. It thinks this guy's got his eyes closed because of the hair drooping down over his eyebrows and into the top of his eye, not even his eye per se. And for that reason, it's coming up as eyes closed, even though evidently his eyes are open. So we will do what we can to avoid these false positives with eyes closed. But for now, keep in mind the red box means eyes closed. You will end up with probably some false positives, but you don't end up with false negatives. I have not seen, so there's another sort of false positive because of his hair. His left eye is pretty much closed. She's definitely got her eyes closed. I've not seen this situation where it says the eye's open. I've not seen false negatives. I've not seen this one say her eyes are open. It always detects real eyes closed. The problem is it's sometimes finding eyes that are open and thinking they're closed because of the hair or some other obstruction of the eye. So that's the first thing you can do, eyes closed. A step you may want to introduce into your workflow. Oh, I should say with the eyes closed, it really doesn't matter. The eyes closed are just for your own benefit, to have a look, see who's got their eyes closed, maybe then decide what to do from there on. It doesn't have sort of practical implications further along with the other functions that the software can do, that the toolkit can do. So it's there for information. It doesn't really affect anything else. So you can just leave those falsies, those false eyes closed. That doesn't really affect anything. However, one thing you want to check, I think, as your first step is this filter, multiple faces. Because sometimes, especially in big jobs, we've got lots of images, you'll get some artifacts, you'll get some false positives where it's detected more than one face, and that does have implications. So if we look at, I'll just switch to single view, for some reason, it's detected another face down here, possibly because of the crest on her shirt. Again, another sort of face there. It thinks that's a face, these artifacts. Down here, it thinks it's a face with eyes closed because it's red. And another one there. So we've had, out of those 2,000 images, what was it, 5 or so multiple faces. You should deal with these because for an image, if it's got multiple faces in it, that does have implications down the line. When we go to check matches, you'll get wrong results because of an image that's got two faces not matching to the other one. When we go to do Neo Group, there's implications. So step one in your workflow, I think, should be multiple faces, check for multiple faces, and then deal with them. How do we deal with them? Okay, we'll go back to this, a better view, maybe, something like that. There is a little extra thing in the toolbar here, Image Face Tool. Click that, and you see your mouse becomes, the box becomes sort of active as you hover over it. Yeah. Just go to the box that you don't want, the bad face, and once that becomes active like that, just Control click it, and it's gone. And it's because I'm filtering for multiple faces, it's taken it out. So you just quickly go through and just Control click the bad faces, if there are any. Okay, and they're all gone now. The multiple faces filter is empty. There's another way of doing it, and let me go to a different job for that. Let's go to this one. Again, a real job, multiple faces here. There's 4. Now let's take this one for example. Here, the artifact face was the basketball. Now it could be that every image has a basketball with a face on it. And rather than go Control clicking through them all, another thing you can do is crop the image a bit so that the basketball's out of frame. You crop the image, basketball's out of frame, hit Control F5 again, and now because it doesn't see the basketball, it will not find that face. Okay, it's gone. So you could do that for all your images, then reset the crop, for example. I'd only do that if there are lots where the artifact face is legitimately there and out of frame, and it's easy to select them all, crop them tighter, detect again, and then reset your crop, or create another view and do this. But for the most part, from what I've seen, even in this particular job, where we had a few with the basketball, I have found it easier to go to the Image Faces tool and then just Control click the few that are artifacts. Okay, done. So they're gone. Okay, so I bring up that sort of extra step, that checking for multiple faces, as your first step, because if a portrait image, a single portrait image, does have that artifact face in there as well, it will affect things down the line, so you should deal with it. Let me go back to the first job again. Okay. What else can we do? We've seen how we check for eyes closed. A very popular thing people are using this for is to check for matching. A lot of people routinely come into poses mode, for example, and just go through the images one at a time, hitting Get Next, for example. Let me say, for example, and just check. This is a single pose, a shoot. So if they saw 2 different faces in there, they would know that there was a problem with the matching, either in capture post or whatever, for whatever reason. People do that routinely, and it's especially done, I think, for multi-pose shoots. If you see 2 different faces in there, you know that there was a problem with matching. With the face detection done, you can now check for mismatches. So are mismatched? That's what it's checking for. Get Next. Okay, and it's jumped to this subject, George Smith, and that's obviously a mismatch. The face detection templates were compared for the images in this subject, and it saw 2 different ones, and it's presented them as a mismatch, which is correct. So there's your first real advantage of the face detect, I think, is checking for mismatches. And you can do it in poses mode. You can also do it in match mode. In match mode, we have a filter. So at the moment, we're seeing the filter itself, the label is misspelled, but it still works. Check that filter, mismatched, and now you're only seeing mismatched images. Okay, so that's the one we saw before. That's obviously not George Smith. All 3 of these images, these 2 can't both be Vincent. They're obviously very different kids. And because you're in match mode, this is where you'd fix these mismatches anyway. So you can check for mismatches in match mode, poses mode, and in Capture Post. In Capture Post, it will check it for you as you shoot if you wanted to do that. Okay. So mismatching poses. Something else you can do with the technology is help you with your cropping. So there's a toolbar here. Let me just skip back. Okay, that'll do. This toolbar down the bottom, that is optional. You'll only want to display that if you're doing cropping, if you're going to use this to help you with your cropping and alignment. To get that to show up, it won't show up by default. You go to File, Options, Image Faces Correct, this tab, File Options, Image Faces Correct, Show Faces Toolbar. I believe that's unchecked by default, because if you're not using our face detection at all, you don't want that toolbar polluting your images mode. Likewise, if you're going to use face detect for everything else, but not going to use it for cropping, you don't necessarily need this toolbar either. I've activated it. Okay. And therefore it will show it. When you activate it the first time, it will tell you need to shut down the app and restart it before it takes effect. Now, we've done the detection, but we could have done the detection within the toolbar all in one step. So we've got detect and crop, or just detect. So that's another way of doing the detect rather than Control F5. We could have come in here and clicked this detect button if we had this toolbar active. Let's think about the cropping now. You can see the cropping is a little bit variable from image to image. It's not bad. What we can get it to do for you is align it left and right. Now, normally you would have that value at 50%. You normally want the face in the middle, in the horizontal plane, left or right. Then for the rest of it, we can align up and down and size. And then we've got 3 options as to exactly what are we going to align up and down and left and right. Are we going to use the face? Are we going to use the head? Or are we going to use the forehead? The face is what, the face is what the technology has detected. It's detected the face, certain what we call landmarks around the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the ears. So that's the face. That's what's the face. And it would use those. From there, it does 2 calculations. It calculates the top of the head. So when we talk about head, the top of the head, it calculates. And by top of the head, we're talking about the top of the skull. Not necessarily, if she's wearing a hat, that's not the top of the head. Or if she's got really big hair, that's not the top of the head, it's the top of the skull. And the forehead. The forehead's right there in the middle. So that's the forehead. The head is the top of the skull, and the face is not that blue box necessarily. The face is the points around the face, eyes, nose, lips, ears, that the technology found. And you can use either of those to do your cropping depending on what suits you. Select all, we'll look at the difference. And the first time you do this, you will play around with these numbers. The 50% is probably always going to be 50%. 37, whatever, that's 30. You'd play around, it will shift up and down. This 30%, it's 30% down from the top. So 30% down from there. And the size. So you can do detect and crop. It's already done the detect, so the crop will be relatively quick. And you can see it's adjusted everyone according to those figures and made the cropping and the positioning far more consistent. Okay, so that was using the face. I can reset that and use the head. And I'd already plugged in these numbers. I found these numbers working the best, 13% there. So now we're going to say move the head 13% down from the top. Okay, that will give you a different result because it's now using the top of the head, but you may prefer that result. And then reset. And we can use the forehead. And we'll just use what it's there, 23%. Again, slightly different result. You will play around with these and you will come up with the numbers that work best for your photographers, for your images, depending on their starting point. Now, the aim of them, to be honest, it's not going to be 100%. You're probably still going to want to go in and tweak some images. Because remember, we're doing face detect, we're not doing head detect. So there's a little bit of extrapolation that needs to be done. What it does do for you, and I think it does it extremely well, is it makes the photography more consistent. Consider two different photographers. One guy's really good. His images are very consistent from kid to kid to kid. When those images come into the lab, the person who's looking at cropping will say to you, oh, photographer X, I love doing his stuff because I have to spend very little time cropping and adjusting his images because they're all he's shot them very consistently. The kid's always standing exactly on the X, not slightly in front of it, not slightly behind it. The photographer himself doesn't zoom in and out, and he doesn't move forward and back himself. He's always shooting in the same plane. He's not tilting the camera up and down. So for photographer X, I'm spending far less time cropping the images when they come back into the studio. Photographer Y, on the other hand, the kid stands a little bit closer, a little bit further away each time. The photographer himself is not always in the same spot. Camera's not always in the same spot, playing around with the zoom. Photographer Y, you have to spend a lot more time cropping. What this technology will do for you is turn photographer Y into photographer X. It will make the photography far more consistent and the cropping far more consistent. That doesn't mean, for example, that you might think, oh, okay, this guy, because he's got bigger hair, I might bring him down or up a bit. Okay, so it's not necessarily going to make people with big variations in the way they look, big faces, big hair, skinny faces, hats, ponytails. It's not necessarily going to fix those, but it will make the photography far more consistent, so they're far easier to fix, and you've got to fix far fewer images. Okay, but it's the sort of thing you've got to play with it yourself, and you'll come up with your own system and your own numbers to plug in there. All right, so we've looked at eyes closed, we've looked at mismatched, we've looked at cropping, and I am now going to move to groups. Neo Group was for people who are doing named groups, and that's huge in Australia, New Zealand, England. This was an absolute godsend because it was such an effort to be able to get to know who's in row 1, position 1, row 1, position 2, and now the face detection can do it for you. I won't spend as much time here compared to what we did in Melbourne because there's a whole lot of new stuff that is in Neo Group that's allied to the face detect, but is not the domain of this particular webinar. Let's have a look what we do. We've got the groups to their particular folders in the normal way. We're in names mode, names. and we do Control F5 or click Detect Recognize. I'm just going to do one group for now. And watch what happens. It goes through, and at first step, it detects the faces. It also puts them in rows. And as those faces turn green, it's looked at that detected face, got its profile, gone back to your portrait images and looked for the same profile, same biometric profile, the same face template. And therefore, from the portrait, it knows that who that kid is, and it puts their names in the names list down the bottom. We'll let it finish. Okay. And you can see the back row. They're the kids that it found. And it, in my experience, they're absolutely always correct. These are false names. So there's no point in me going back and checking against the original results from the photographer because I've changed all their names. You'll notice, and this will happen, the teacher has remained as a white box, and that is because she was absent. If I click on that white box, that's where her name will go. She was absent. You've then got a whole lot of lookup tools to be able to look her up by whatever method you've currently got now to know who she is and put her name in. That could be manual, that could be keyboard lookup, whatever, something like that. And you'll see some other nice things there. The green tick names are names that have arrived by the face detection. The blue tick name, the teacher, for example, is a name that has arrived by the traditional methods, by keyboard lookup, by importing a text file, by scanning a barcode, whatever of the old methods you used to get the names in. Really easy to do, and you can do them all at once, but I'll just do 2 at a time, for example. You can do 2 at a time. You can do them all at once. And then the software will go through and do as I've just shown. You'll see an alert. For example, this one down here, room 53, has got an alert, probably because the teacher's face is not named, and we need to go back and do something with that one. I might cancel that because I wanted to show you a different group. But my point is you can do lots of them at once. After Melbourne, this was probably the most sought after feature, and there are people who have been using it to death already in February at the start of the school year in the Southern Hemisphere. It has saved them a lot of work compared to the traditional way of getting group names in. Okay, that's done. That's done those 2. You can see this guy is white, probably not present. Same with him. Same with the teacher. Let me go up to a bigger group. There's no limit to the size of the groups. We did show, unfortunately, I don't have permission to show that same job that we showed in Melbourne, a whole year level where there were hundreds of kids in the one group, the whole school almost. It works there as well. This one, for example, a lot more kids, it'll just go through and do the same procedure. It doesn't really matter how many kids are in there. Now, I just did Control F5 or just clicked on the icon, and that will suffice for nearly all your groups. For your very, very big groups, like those year level or whole school groups where the faces are incredibly small, you can shift click. When you shift click it, it does this scanning with a far greater level of sensitivity. If you don't do it with that, or if you find that it hasn't detected some faces, like there's no white box around it, and I haven't got any examples to show you of that because of permissions. If you shift click, it scans it with more sensitivity. It will find those faces that it missed the first time because they were so small, perhaps. If people want an example of that, I can show you privately with those other images that I've got, but I can't in the context of a public webinar. There you see that's found them all, and yeah, we have the ability to rearrange the rows as well, just by clicking like that. But I won't go into all the other detail of what we can do with NeoGroup, because it's not directly to do with the face detection, but the face detection for groups has been huge. And don't think it is confined to schools. I know people doing sports, that's not the right job. People doing sports tend not to do this, and I do wonder if it's because it's always been quite hard to do it. But now Face Detect, if you want to start offering named groups for your sports teams, same sort of thing. You need now a group, of course, but you could do exactly the same thing with your named groups and then put it together with the individual portrait in Neopack to make a memory mate. Of course, you can do these name detection for groups for sports groups, any groups really, it doesn't have to be schools. We'll move along from there. Another feature it will do for you is what we could probably call find and match. I'm not sure what's a good name for it, but let me bring up a job that you've seen other times. I'll open this cheerleader's job. Okay, in this particular job, these cheerleaders, we have one image of the kid, the girl, or there is one guy there, who we know who they are. So that's whether you use Capture Post, whether you use QRs, whether some registration, you've got a registration image, an image that will match this face to Betsy, this face to Ola, this face to Marissa. But then you photographed these girls over different days in different outfits, and they're all over the place. It's not like a normal school or even a sports shoot where all the kids, all the shots of one kid are all together, all 6 of them or 4 of them or 2 of them, wherever. So you can use Capture Post, you can use QRs in that circumstance. But we've got images scattered all over the job. You can't use those systems. However, with the Face Detect, there's another way of doing it. It knows it's got one face that it's matched the face, and we've matched it. It's got the face template. We've got a face image matched to a name. We can use it to go through and find all the other images of this girl and of that girl. The way we do it, select everything. Oh, let me just keep me honest. Let's go to poses mode. You can see we've got one image per kid matched. Okay. So there's no smoke and mirrors, nothing up my sleeve here. Control all images, create for unmatched image, create for unmatched subjects. Got this window, create for unmatched images. It's always been there, this little window, but we've added down the bottom. Recognize and match the same faces. So what we're saying is go through, and if there are same faces, recognize and match them together. We've gone images, create for unmatched, and we come down here, recognize and match the same faces and match them with existing subjects. Hit OK. It will do its thing. Okay. It's gone through and matched all the other images based on that first image. Let's go to poses mode now. And you see it's gone through and found all the images of this girl and matched them to her. We only had one to start with, but it went through and found all the others and so forth. Incredibly useful for a number of different scenarios. These sort of jobs, any events, graduations, preschools and kindergartens, where you may take one shot of the little toddler on a studio background, and you obviously can know who he is there. You can use Capture Post, you can use a QR, you can match him, but then you go take action shots of the little kids through the child minding center, at the different activities, outdoors in the playground. They're scattered all over the place. Use this technology and it will bring all of that little toddler's images together and match it to the image that you've got that's matched to. Really, really useful and really, really popular, this use of the technology. And these images were taken over the course of a few days too. It didn't care. It doesn't care what she's wearing. It doesn't care that there's a few days difference between the photography. The images all came in and it did its trick. Let me go to a different job, expand on that a little bit more. Okay, mode. Let me just edit. I was just practicing with showing someone this yesterday and I forgot to reset. So let me do that and delete what I've got. Go on, why aren't you deleting? I know why. Do it this way. Okay, back to images mode. I have a collection of images scattered through the job. Again, I've already done the face detection. I've got nothing else. I've got no data. I've got nothing apart from this collection of images. I'm going to select them all and do images, create for unmatched, subjects, and do that same action again. Now, let's go have a look at what it's done. Let's go to poses mode. I'll start at the bottom. It's gone through and found all these images of John from his very first day at school right through to his current high school portrait. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 13 years worth, 13 years apart. It knew that this guy and this guy is the same guy and brought them all together and matched them together. This one's a little bit easier. Her last 4 years of high school, as in her current year going back, she's in year 10. So from grade 7 through to grade 10. This guy, same sort of thing. 11 years worth of images for him. It had no problem bringing them together and matching them. Pretty hooky. His younger brother, I think, hasn't been in school as long. Preschool through to, I think, year 10 or 11. This handsome young man, 10 years worth of school from, I don't know how old he was there, through to his graduation day. It knew it was the same kid, brought them all together. And finally, this one, over 14 years, she was 3 years old there. She was 17 years old there. That's her entire education, scholarity years, from 2 years of kindergarten through to year 12, grade 12, whatever you want to call it. It had, again, no problem knowing that this image and that image are the same person. And you can see by the image quality, it doesn't even have to be high. These are not the images I showed in Melbourne because we didn't have permission. These are all pretty much friends and our own kids, and we had to go find our photos of them and scan them on a photocopier. They're not good quality. In fact, some of these were even just photographed on a phone and then sent to me. And the technology is still good enough to be able to recognize them as the same face and match them together. Of course, you can then do hooky products with edit, auto assign poses to everybody. Okay, you can start doing these sort of products. Now, as we said in Melbourne and as we talked about it in SPAC, we have far greater plans about how you would do these sort of legacy products, as we're calling them, for the future. I mean, this particular, you could do it now, what I've done, but it requires you going and grabbing all those images, throwing them in the one job. We have a plan for a legacy project where you would create a legacy job, Melbourne High School master job, and you would connect all the older jobs to it, and you'd be able to get to this point without having to know and go find all the images. It will just use the technology together, perhaps with the data of their ID, perhaps, to bring all those images together, and you'll be able to get to these products. But if you really wanted to do this sort of stuff now, you can do what I've done. It will have no problem finding and matching the same face through the years. Okay, so that's the last thing I want to show you, just to whet your appetite, what we're planning to do with what we're calling a legacy project, but just to show you also that the face detection and recognition can work through time, through the different eras. So they're the 5 basic things we're doing now with the face detect. We're doing cropping, we're doing mismatch detection, we're doing eyes closed, we're doing the name detection in Neo Group, and we're doing this find and match, which is great for events. And you can see the possibilities of using it even across different from year to year to year.